In wars, it is relatively rare for two enemy tanks to meet and directly engage each other, but when it does happen, some of the most intense and terrifying tank-on-tank battles occur. Today we will describe 5 anxiety-inducing tank fights that took place during World War II and were recorded in detail. Number 1. Sherman Firefly versus King Tiger. In July 1944, shortly after the landings in Normandy, British armoured divisions were leading the way in Operation Goodwood. One battalion was tasked with defending the left flank of the British advance toward a village near Cagney. At that moment, a worrying report reached a Sherman tank crew that Panther tanks had been spotted to their left, coming exactly from the direction they needed to protect. The Sherman tanks turned toward them, waiting in a cornfield, where the crops were tall enough to cover their tracks, but left the upper part of the tank exposed to potential attacks from the woods where the Panthers had reportedly been seen. Unfortunately for the Sherman crews, the reports were not entirely accurate. The tanks were indeed there, but they were not Panthers. Worse, they were Tigers and King Tigers of the 503rd Heavy SS Panzer Battalion. Although many of their tanks had been damaged during the preceding air bombardment, around a dozen were still operational and ready to fight. The British tankers, prepared in defensive positions, soon spotted the advancing King Tigers. Reacting quickly, one of them, a Sherman Firefly commanded by Lieutenant Malcolm Locke, advanced and took aim at one of the King Tigers. He ordered the gunner to load an armor-piercing round and fire. Moments later, the Firefly's 17-pounder gun fired, hitting the King Tiger's side and causing an internal explosion. A few moments later, a second King Tiger was also knocked out, but it is unclear which Sherman crew was responsible. Confused and having lost 2 tanks in quick succession, the German forces, overwhelmed by British fire, deployed a smokescreen and retreated. Although the British initially believed they were up against a Panther tank, once they realized it was a King Tiger, it boosted the Allied tankers' morale, proving that even the most powerful German tanks could be destroyed. Number 2. Tiger versus Comet. This duel took place in April 1945, near the end of the war, as the German forces fought fanatically to defend their homeland. In the forests of Western Germany, isolated German infantry units with a few tanks set ambushes for the advancing Allies. One such unit was Kampfgruppe Schulze, which had 6 Tiger tanks and 5 Panther tanks, cautiously waiting for the Allies. Over the course of several turbulent days, their tanks suffered mechanical breakdowns, got stuck in mud, and had to be destroyed by their crews, or lost in skirmishes with the Allies, leaving them with only one operational tank, the Tiger F-02. After linking up with another battle group, they now had 3 Tiger tanks and started advancing toward the British 11th Armoured Division. In these forests, the Tigers encountered the British Comet, the latest design. Although it was much faster and more maneuverable, the Comet lacked the heavy armour of the Tiger, and its 17-pounder gun needed to be at close range to penetrate the Tiger's thick armour. Tiger F-02 engaged 3 Comet tanks, quickly knocking out one with 3 shots, while the other 2 reversed and retreated, with the Germans doing the same. The next morning, the British tanks cautiously moved forward, hoping the Tigers had withdrawn. However, Lieutenant Johnny Langdon quickly spotted F-02 waiting beside the forest road. It appeared to be waiting for them. Using the Comet's mobility, Langdon's tank advanced rapidly through the forest, attempting to flank the Tiger, which noticed the maneuver too late. The Tiger tried to traverse its gun as quickly as possible, but its slow rotating turret was no match for the Comet's speed. The Comet's armor-piercing round hit the Tiger's thinner side armor, penetrated it, and ignited the left rear fuel tank. Fire immediately broke out, and the German crew barely escaped before the Tiger was engulfed in flames. The British Comet crew was fortunate to spot the Tiger first and made a split-second decision to flank it. Had they advanced just a little further down the road, they would likely have been torn apart by the Tiger's 88mm gun. Number 3. Cromwell versus Two Panthers. During Operation Market Garden, the King's Royal Hussars were among the units involved, operating under the command of the American 101st Airborne Division. On September 19th, they received orders to secure positions around Eindhoven. Their force consisted of a 95mm Centaur tank, 2 scout cars, and 3 Cromwell tanks supported by American paratroopers. By midday, the force had reached the southern outskirts of a village, where the tanks took up positions along the main road, while the American paratroopers dug in nearby. A scout car was sent forward to assess the situation. They spotted a German cyclist and infantryman, fired on them, and then withdrew. Shortly afterward, a patrol of paratroopers supported by the Cromwells moved forward. While providing cover for the patrol, the Cromwells suddenly spotted two German Panthers moving through a field. Within seconds, the Cromwell gunners were ordered to open fire. One 75mm armor-piercing shell hit the side of a Panther, knocking it out with a single shot, while others missed the second Panther, which quickly disappeared. After this engagement, Allied forces moved into the village, and around 2 p.m., another Panther was spotted near the village church. It was unclear whether this was the same Panther that had disappeared earlier or a third one. Nevertheless, one of the Cromwells quickly moved into position and fired 4 armor-piercing rounds in rapid succession. All 4 shots hit their target, knocking out the Panther. 2 hits in the driver's compartment, one just above the tracks, and one in the engine, an example of excellent gunnery. During the fighting that day, the Allied forces also destroyed 2 German half-tracks, damaged another, and captured 5 German soldiers. Number 4. M36 Jackson vs. Jagdtiger. On December 31st, 1944, the German First Army launched a large-scale counterattack to exploit the thin Allied lines in northeastern France. German troops quickly advanced through snowy fields and forests, engaging the forward American positions. The attack was described by American soldiers as the most vicious and determined assault they had ever witnessed. The Allies tried to defend the city of Rimling against the superior German forces, which had tanks, armored vehicles, and heavy artillery that quickly reduced the town to ruins. Despite everything, the Allies held their ground. On the morning of January 9th, 3 Jagdtiger tanks of the 653rd Heavy Panzer Battalion were deployed. The Jagdtiger was the most powerful German tank, weighing 70 tons, with 10-inch thick frontal armor and a powerful 128mm gun. However, despite its fearsome appearance and destructive power, it had vulnerabilities that could be exploited. That morning, 4 M36 Jackson tank destroyers were providing close fire support to the infantry. One of the Jacksons moved into position and suddenly spotted the 3 Jagdtigers on the ridgeline. Shocked, the commander ordered the gunner to open fire immediately with their 90mm gun, and 3 rounds were quickly fired. The first 2 missed, but the third round struck the side of a Jagdtiger, hitting its ammunition storage, which immediately exploded, killing all 6 crew members instantly. The German commander of nearby Jagdtiger later recalled how they narrowly escaped the first round, reversed a few meters, and then saw the second round hit the exact spot where they had just been. Moments later, a massive explosion rocked the battlefield as the Jagdtiger beside them was destroyed. The remaining Jagdtigers retreated, and the Jackson tank destroyer proved it could threaten even the most powerful German tanks when used effectively. Number 5. M18 Hellcat vs. Panzer IV. On September 19, 1944, a fierce German counterattack aimed to destroy General Patton's spearhead, and the 113th Panzer Brigade advanced rapidly toward Aracourt. Near the front lines were the men of the 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion, who were called into action after the first German tanks were spotted. 4 M18 Hellcats were ordered to take up blocking positions off the main road. The weather was poor, with low visibility, and during their advance, a shell suddenly flew overhead from an unknown direction. The Hellcats cautiously continued forward. They soon reached a hill where they positioned themselves and prepared to engage. Moments later, a Panzer IV appeared at the foot of the hill. The lead Hellcat immediately opened fire and destroyed the Panzer with a single shot. The burning Panzer illuminated its surroundings, revealing more German tanks advancing in a V formation. The first Hellcat knocked out a second Panzer, but was hit in return, putting it out of action. The crew was wounded, and the assistant driver was killed. While the M18 Hellcat had a powerful gun, its armor was too thin to withstand any serious anti-tank fire, especially from the Panzer IV's gun. The remaining Hellcats opened fire, destroying 3 more Panzers as they attempted to retreat into the woods. The Hellcats then withdrew to a nearby hill. However, while retreating, they spotted several more tanks about 2,000 yards away. After confirming they were German tanks, the Hellcats opened fire and called in artillery from a nearby battery to assist. Soon, 5 German tanks were destroyed. But the battle wasn't over yet. An observation plane, flying despite the poor weather, informed the Hellcats of more German tanks attempting to flank them. Alerted in time, the Hellcats turned to face the threat. As the German tanks approached, fire was exchanged, and 2 German tanks were hit, but 2 of the Hellcats were also knocked out. Only 1 operational Hellcat of the original 4 returned to base. Despite the losses, this platoon of Hellcats managed to destroy 9 German tanks, and by the end of the day, the 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion had knocked out a total of 29 German tanks.